At 02:47 local time, a Russian patrol boat's radar picked up the impossible Ukrainian FPV drones racing straight into Crimea's most protected airspace. What followed exposed a catastrophic blind spot in Russia's defenses. On the operator's screen, 5 missiles erupted into the night. Millions of rubles of precision weaponry fired in panic. They weren't aimed at the targets they'd been designed to hit. When the smoke cleared, the drone was still airborne, unharmed. Now inside Crimean airspace, those drones had a single job: neutralize the defenses around Mount Ary. First, they had to survive something no one thought could happen. Down on the beach, a Pantsir S-1 spun its radar dish. This wasn't junk. It was Russia's premier point defense system, built to shred cruise missiles and protect critical sites. It had just wasted a fortune on missiles while failing to touch a drone that cost less than an iPhone. Mount Ary's domes filled the thermal display, the distinctive spheres crowning the summit. The Pantsir switched to its 30mm cannons. Tracers lit the night, spectacular and useless. The rounds missed by wide margins. The operator faced a baffling problem. The Ukrainian drone was flying perpendicular to the radar beam at roughly 50 meters altitude, creating a Doppler notch. Radars don't only locate objects, they measure how fast a target is coming toward or moving away. That measurement is radial velocity. A drone flying sideways across the beam has near zero radial velocity, so the radar treats it like stationary ground clutter and filters it out. Sea reflections made it worse. Radar waves bouncing off the water produced ghost targets below the real ones. The tracker averaged the real returns with reflections and sent missiles into empty space between them. Proximity fuses need a solid radar return, roughly half a square meter, to arm. These drones returned about 1/100th of that. The missiles literally didn't recognize them as valid targets. As the Pantsir operator struggled to understand, more drones appeared on thermal and converged like a swarm. The system detected them at 2 km, but its missiles required 1.5 km to arm. At a closure rate of 40 minutes, detection to overflight was about 12 seconds. 12 seconds to engage targets the system was effectively blind to. Radio channels erupted, controllers calling for fighters, the Pantsir reporting multiple contacts it couldn't engage, shouts about missiles that wouldn't track. These weren't Tomahawks. They were small, fast commercial drones. Their speed and profile made them invisible to systems built for larger threats. At 0250, the lead drone adjusted course and lined up on the first dome. Beneath those protective shells sat radars worth hundreds of millions. Systems meant to track ballistic missiles and give early warning across the Black Sea. The domes were built to survive heavy bombardment, not low-flying consumer electronics skimming treetops. Other drones closed on their targets. The Pantsir operator could only watch and report. His commander ordered fighters scrambled. And Su-30 tore through the pre-dawn darkness, Russia's answer to the F-15, recently upgraded and armed with powerful radars. But it too struggled. The pilot's bar's radar showed contacts that blinked in and out like fireflies, present for one sweep, gone the next. The radar needs multiple consecutive returns to confirm a track, but these drones dropped below the noise floor after 2 or 3 sweeps. The noise floor is the background radio noise a radar receives. When a drone's return falls below that level, it becomes indistinguishable from static, preventing a stable track file. Frustrated, the pilot fired an R-73. The missile screamed away from the rail, accelerating to Mach 2.5, millions spent to chase fighters. The drone's thermal camera recorded the seeker closing in, then breaking off. The issue was temperature. The R-73's infrared seeker hunts hot jet exhausts at roughly 1,000 degrees C. Electric. Drone motors run near 50 degrees barely, warmer than a laptop, so the seeker couldn't detect them until within about 500 meters, by which time it was too late to correct. A second missile followed, its blast rocking the drone's camera, but still no hit. Even at extreme maneuvering, 40 G, and Mach speeds, the missile's turning radius remained around 600 meters. Engaging from 2 km against a target that jinks unpredictably every few seconds leaves no room to turn. Physics didn't care about the sophistication of the weapons. A third and fourth missile were launched. Tens of millions of rubles burned with nothing to show. At 0252, the pilot resorted to the GSH-30 cannon, unleashing 30mm rounds at 500 rounds per minute. But the fire control computer's calculated lead angles were rendered useless by the drone's erratic, low-altitude flight and tiny radar thermal signatures. Even a hail of cannon fire failed to connect. What unfolded that night wasn't a failure of courage or effort. It was a mismatch between legacy air defense design assumptions and a new kind of threat. Cheap, low-flying, highly maneuverable drones that exploit gaps in radar physics, seeker sensitivity, and fuse-arming logic. The targeting system worked on linear prediction, assuming the drones would keep flying straight. But every 2 seconds they shifted slightly, 2 or 3 meters left or right. A small move, but at a kilometer's distance it turned into a 10-meter miss. The computer was always one step behind, solving yesterday's problem while the drones created new ones. 500 meters below, the first drone closed in on its target. The 96L6E radar, NATO codenamed Cheeseboard, sat exposed on its vehicle mount. This was no ordinary radar. It fed targeting data to the S-400 system, tracking up to 100 objects at once and coordinating multiple missile launches. Without it, the feared S-400s were practically blind. At 02:54 hours, the drone's shaped charge struck the antenna array. Molten copper traveling at 8 kilometers per second tore through its circuitry, fusing connections that were never meant to touch. In an instant, millions of dollars of high-end electronics became smoking debris. Out of missiles, the Su-30 pilot pulled hard into a climb, reporting failure to ground control. His fuel gauge was dropping fast. He had to return to base. 4 missiles, hundreds of cannon rounds, and not a single hit. As he turned away, more drones pushed on toward Mount Ary, unopposed. Then something strange appeared on his radar. New contacts, dozens of them, materializing 10 kilometers off the coast. They weren't coming from Ukrainian territory. They were just appearing, like ghosts rising from the sea. Ground control saw the same impossible thing. While the Russians tracked what was in the sky, they missed what was right beneath them. 10 kilometers off Crimea's coast, small unmanned boats floated silently. No crew, no markings, just the Ursula-class platforms hidden in plain sight. They'd been there for 2 hours, invisible to every radar watching from the mountains. Their secret wasn't advanced technology, it was geometry. The Podlet K1 radar on Mount Ary could detect aircraft 300 kilometers away and even track ballistic missiles in space. But from its position at 3,600 feet with a minimum depression angle of -2 degrees, it physically couldn't see anything below 43 meters within 10 kilometers of shore. The boats sat just 5 meters above the waves, sailing comfortably inside a blind zone the size of a city. As the first drones destroyed the S-400 radar, these USVs launched more. Their electric motors screamed to life like angry hornets. But how were they operating so far from land? Ukraine doesn't control its drones directly from Odessa to Crimea. The Earth's curve would cut off the signal long before they got close. Instead, they use relay boats, floating signal towers stationed 10 to 20 kilometers offshore. Each carries tall antennas, high-power radios, or Starlink connections. Commands from Odessa are sent via encrypted link to the relay boats, which then transmit the signals to the nearby drones. The video feed returns the same way, drone to boat, then back to the operator in Odessa almost instantly. With just 3 to 5 of these relay boats, Ukraine can cover over 200 kilometers of coastline. Operators remain safe and comfortable far from the front line, controlling drones deep in enemy territory with near-perfect precision. They're literally flying combat missions while sipping coffee, using what's essentially a floating Wi-Fi extender. Even if Russia pinpointed the signal source, they couldn't hit it. By 02:57, more boats appeared in the dawn light, each launching a new swarm. The drones didn't form neat attack formations. They scattered like startled birds, flying seemingly random paths that all converged on target at the same instant. Nature's chaos weaponized. The coastal radars never noticed. Their filters were set to ignore anything moving under 20 knots, dismissing them as fishing boats or civilian vessels. These USVs cruised at just 15 knots, blending perfectly with the background noise. On the radar screens of Crimea, they didn't exist, because the computers had decided not to see them. Within 2 minutes of the new launch, the lead drone from the second swarm reached the base of the first dome. No windows, no doors, just smooth layers of concrete and fiberglass, built to survive direct airstrikes. But the Ukrainians had found what the designers missed: emergency access panels at ground level for maintenance crews. These panels could handle 500 psi of overpressure from bombs above. Impressive, but useless against a shaped charge. A jet of molten copper hit with over 2 million psi, cutting through the steel like paper. Next, the Nebo dome was hit, Russia's prized radar designed to defeat stealth. Using meter wave frequencies, it could reportedly spot F-35s from 600 kilometers away. Without it, every S-400 battery in Crimea was blind beyond 40 kilometers. Their radars couldn't see past the horizon without the Nebo's data feed. By 02:59 hours, all drones had been launched. With the Russians effectively blind, it was time to strike. At 03:02, the mountaintop lit up. The Nebo's massive VHF array were now exposed, took direct hits. The shaped charges didn't just pierce the dome. They created plasma channels that turned insulators into conductors. Circuits meant for 2 amps suddenly carried 1,000. The surge ripped through waveguides faster than lightning. 40 seconds later, the Podlyot K-1 radar was hit. Its job was to watch the low-altitude approaches, tracking cruise missiles hugging the terrain from 300 kilometers out. Without it, anything flying under 100 meters became invisible. Years of defense coverage vanished in seconds. 3 kilometers away, a BK-16 landing craft appeared in the thermal feed. The crew saw drones coming and opened fire. 14.5 millimeter deck guns, rifles, everything they had. The radar showed blips approaching, but navigation radars can't calculate firing solutions. They were shooting at shadows. The drone targeting the BK-16 ignored it all.